Right, so here we are at the Mosley Road swimming baths. Now, before the war, it was used as swimming baths. So, the building itself is 113 years old. It's really old, and it was used by all the community of all ages, men and women and children, that used to come here and come for a nice leisurely swim. However, during the war, it wasn't a swimming bath. It was used as an emergency hospital, which means if you were injured anywhere around Balsall Heath, you would have been sent here. The water was emptied out the pool, the floor was boarded over, and there would have been doctors, nurses to help you get better. All in Mosley Road swimming baths. So, during an air raid, this hospital, or swimming baths, would have been full of patients, whether it be people injured in air raids or even fire wardens who've also been injured attending to fires. So now we've arrived at the old Clifton Junior School. The junior school is only from years 3 to 6, so there would have been a lot less pupils here back in the day. Boys would have entered on this side and girls would have entered on the other side, which seems a bit strange to us. Now, what do you notice about the building? It looks very different from Clifton Primary like it is today. It's a lot older. This is like an old Victorian building. But the school's also different because of the lessons as well. So girls would have been taught things like honour, how to love your home, whereas the boys would have had more hands-on subjects like woodwork and metalwork. So it was very different to how school is today. However, during the war, this was an evacuation point. So if you were a child that was going to be evacuated out of the city, you would have come here. There would have been a big long register and you would have got your name checked off and then travelled on a train to the countryside. And like we've already learned in IPC, an evacuated child is someone that gets out of the dangerous city, which was more likely to be bombed to cause destruction and damage really important buildings, and they would have been taken to a safe village in the countryside so that they were out of harm's way. Take a look at this long list of children which is on the Clifton website. This is a list of children who were evacuated during the war. They would have gone to the Clifton Junior School ready to get on a train and off into the countryside. Right, so now we've arrived at Anderton Park Primary School. We're just at the end of Dennis Road on Birchwood Crescent. And here is another local primary school, a bit like the old Clifton Junior School as well. Look at the similarities in the building. It's old, it's an old Victorian building. There also would have been separate entrances, a bit like at Clifton Juniors, for the girls and the boys. And before the war, it was also a school for juniors and for infant children as well. So there would have been a lot more pupils in this school before the war. However, during the war, it changed quite a bit. Now, during the war, right behind me here would have been an underground World War II shelter. So if you lived any of the houses round in the local area, you wouldn't have had space in the back garden to build your own shelter. So if you were at home and you heard an air raid siren, which means the planes were going to come over, you would have come here. It was large enough to fit hundreds of people. There would have been lots of spare gas masks and a lot of food. Because when you arrived at the shelter, you might have been here for several hours or even during the whole night. Once the planes had passed over and it was safe, you would come out and go back home. And hopefully you'd come out to find everything safe. Sometimes people would have left the underground shelter to find their homes have been bombed and people had been badly injured. Our next stop is Balsall Heath Park, and before the war it was still a park for families, for children to come and enjoy some of the outdoors. And remember, back during the war there would have been less things to do indoors. There wouldn't have been any TVs, no PlayStation, so they would have come to the park for a bit of fun. But just like all the other sites we've looked at today, the park also changed its use during the war. So when World War II started, it wasn't still a park. It changed into a place where crops could be grown. So lots of vegetables, potatoes, carrots, easy vegetables that can be grown in England. And this was really important during the war because everyone had ration books, which meant when you went to the shops for food, you could only get a certain amount. That was so everyone had enough food to survive and no one being selfish and taking extra food. Therefore, it was great to have a place like Balsall Heath Park in your local area so that you could get extra fruit and vegetables right from the ground. And this would have been as well as the rations that you could use in the shops. So far on our journey, we've had schools evacuating children, we've had underground bunkers and Balsall Heath Park growing their own vegetables. This was all part of the war effort in an attempt for everyone to pull together and help to win the war. Now just across the road from Balsall Heath Park is this piece of land, and it just looks like a normal bit of grass, but this is where Carlton Cinema used to be. Now if you look on the ground, this is where the stage would have been, where the screen for the cinema was, and behind would have been rows and rows of seats for the audience to sit. So before the war, this was a very popular cinema. There would have been queues of people all the way down the road ready to watch the latest film. Life during the war wasn't all doom and gloom. You would still live a normal life. So you'd still go to school, you'd still go to the shops, you'd go to the park, and you'd even come to a place like the Carlton Cinema. Everyone tried to live a normal life, even though there was a world war happening. That was to make sure everyone was still happy and keeping their spirits high. On the 25th of October 1940, so about a year into the war, lots of people were queuing along the road to see the latest film, Typhoon. It was a great night, everyone was enjoying the film, when all of a sudden a bomb fell through the roof of the cinema. Even though an air raid siren probably would have sounded, in the cinema not many people would have heard it, and sadly 19 people were killed by the blast of the bomb. The bomb would have dropped right onto the stage where the screen was, so the people sat close to the front would have been killed instantly by the bomb, whereas the people at the back of the cinema would have been a lot safer. And today, those 19 lives that were sadly lost are marked by 19 stones all the way along the park. We'll be learning more about the Carlton Cinema disaster in IPC, and in particular a teenage boy called Ted Byrne, who was killed in the blast of the bomb. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our local history walk around Balsall Heath. We've learned lots about different landmarks in our local area and how they were affected during World War II. And we'll carry on learning more about them during our IPC lessons.